What if the person you've tried to forget never truly left because the story isn't over? What if the age difference you fear isn't the real obstacle? It's the fear that lives inside you. Stay until the end, because what you're about to hear may completely change your perspective on love, destiny, and that strange encounter that refuses to fade from your mind. Before continuing, answer honestly. Have you ever met someone who felt strangely familiar? Someone who seemed to know parts of you that even you hadn't explored? If your answer is yes, write "I hear you" in the comments, not for anyone else, but for yourself. Because acknowledging a truth is often the first step to understanding it. People often believe that love begins the moment two eyes meet, a conversation starts, or a shared laugh creates an undeniable spark. However, the deepest forms of love rarely announce themselves so obviously. They begin silently beneath the surface of consciousness, long before the mind can organize what the heart has already felt. That's why some encounters feel strangely familiar from the very first moment. You can't explain why a particular person captures your attention so completely, because the experience doesn't originate in reason. It arises from a place within you that has been silently waiting to be acknowledged. The conscious mind seeks practical explanations: appearance, personality, opportunity, or coincidence. But these explanations usually come after the feeling has already taken root. Love, in its earliest form, is not a decision, but a recognition, as if something forgotten has been suddenly remembered. This recognition doesn't mean that two people are destined to stay together forever, nor does it guarantee a perfect relationship. Instead, it indicates that someone has entered your life with the potential to reveal parts of you that had remained hidden. Certain people awaken a courage you didn't know you possessed. Others expose fears you spent years trying to ignore. Their presence becomes a mirror reflecting both your strengths and your unresolved conflicts. That's why authentic love often feels both comforting and unsettling. It invites you to move beyond habitual patterns and confront truths that ordinary relationships may never uncover. You begin to notice that your reactions become more intense, your thoughts more persistent, and your emotions more revealing. What on the surface seems like attraction is often an invitation to deeper self-knowledge. The person in front of you becomes significant not just for who they are, but for what their presence reveals within you. When love begins this way, it's less about possession and more about transformation. It invites you to see beyond appearances, to question old assumptions, and to recognize that the most meaningful connections often begin long before the intellect can explain why they matter. The human mind has a remarkable habit of resisting what it cannot immediately explain. When an unexpected connection forms, especially between two people separated by a significant age gap, the first response is usually not curiosity, but doubt. Society has conditioned us to measure relationships by visible standards before considering their invisible foundations. We're taught to focus on birthdays, appearances, and societal expectations, paying far less attention to emotional maturity, shared values, or the unspoken understanding that can exist between two people. Because of this conditioning, the age difference quickly becomes the focus. While the age difference itself may not be the root cause of the unease, it's simple. What surrounds it is far more complex. It stirs up fears of judgment, rejection, misunderstanding, and uncertainty. These fears often outweigh the relationship itself, creating an internal conflict that has little to do with genuine affection. At the same time, an unusual connection can reveal hidden assumptions that have lain buried for years. You might begin to wonder if your feelings are authentic or simply a reaction to something unresolved within yourself. You might question whether you're seeking wisdom, reassurance, admiration, excitement, or validation instead of seeing the other person for who they truly are. These questions don't indicate that the relationship is fake. They are invitations to examine your inner world honestly. Every meaningful relationship has the power to reveal beliefs you never knew you held. The age difference simply makes those beliefs impossible to ignore, as it challenges familiar ideas about what love is supposed to look like. Some people shy away from such a connection because they fear societal opinion more than their own truth. Others rush into it without carefully examining their motives. Neither response leads to genuine understanding. The deeper task is to distinguish between the fear generated by external expectations and the wisdom born of deep reflection. Only then can you recognize whether the bond is based on mutual respect, responsibility, and genuine care, or whether it is being shaped by projections, fantasies, or unmet emotional needs, seeking expression through another person. It is often assumed that maturity comes automatically with age, but time and growth are not the same thing. A person can accumulate decades of experience without ever learning to face fear, accept responsibility, or understand their own emotions. Another person may be younger, but demonstrate remarkable patience, empathy, self-awareness, and resilience because they have chosen to learn from life's challenges rather than simply endure them. Therefore, genuine connection isn't measured by age alone. It's measured by the quality of character each person brings to the relationship. Emotional maturity manifests through consistent actions, honest communication, accountability, and a willingness to grow together rather than trying to control one another. These qualities aren't guaranteed by birth date. They develop through reflection, humility, and carefully integrated experience. When two people meet, what sustains their bond is rarely the age difference. It's their ability to understand each other beyond appearances. A relationship flourishes when both can listen without immediately becoming defensive, disagree without disrespecting one another, and support each other without losing their own identity. These are signs of psychological maturity, not chronological age. One person may bring enthusiasm for exploring new possibilities, while the other contributes the perspective gained through experience. Neither role is inherently tied to being younger or older. Human beings are far more complex than the labels society assigns them. A young person may possess extraordinary emotional stability, while an older person may still grapple with insecurity, impulsiveness, or unresolved wounds. Similarly, an older person may embody wisdom and compassion, while a younger partner brings creativity, adaptability, and a fresh perspective. When these qualities are shared with mutual respect rather than superiority, the relationship becomes a space where both people continue to evolve. This perspective does not suggest that every relationship with an age gap is healthy or destined for success. Every relationship deserves careful evaluation based on trust, respect, equality, and shared responsibility. The essential question is not how many years separate two lives, but whether both individuals encourage each other to be more honest, compassionate, and responsible. A meaningful relationship reveals itself through the depth of character, the consistency of actions, and the willingness of both partners to face reality together with integrity rather than relying on assumptions based solely on age. Every meaningful relationship carries a hidden purpose that goes beyond mere companionship. While most people believe they choose another person simply because of attraction, compatibility, or shared interests, the deeper reality is that meaningful relationships often reveal dimensions of the self that had remained hidden. Another person becomes a mirror, not because they perfectly reflect your personality, but because their presence unveils your hidden emotions, forgotten memories, unconscious habits, and unexamined beliefs. You begin to notice reactions that seem more intense than the circumstances themselves. A simple conversation can evoke unexpected joy, fear, jealousy, peace, or vulnerability. These emotional responses are rarely created solely by the other person. More often, they expose parts of your inner world that have been waiting to be acknowledged. What you experience in them often points to something unresolved or undiscovered within yourself. That's why some people come into your life and immediately change how you see yourself. They can challenge your assumptions, question your certainty, or awaken qualities you never knew were present around you. You might discover courage where you once found hesitation, compassion where you expected resentment, or insecurity where you thought you were completely confident. Their influence isn't magical. It's reflective. They illuminate what has always existed beneath the surface of your awareness. Just as a calm lake reveals a clear reflection only when the water is still, meaningful relationships reveal the hidden landscape of the mind when you're willing to observe your reactions honestly instead of blaming or idealizing the other person. The biggest mistake is assuming that every intense feeling originates solely in the person in front of you. Sometimes admiration contains a longing for qualities you wish to develop in yourself. Sometimes frustration reveals a wound that existed long before the relationship began. Sometimes deep affection uncovers your capacity to trust after years of emotional distance. The relationship becomes valuable because it exposes truths that daily routines often obscure. Instead of simply asking who the other person is, a wiser question is what their presence teaches you about yourself. Every emotional response becomes an invitation to greater self-awareness. Every conflict becomes an opportunity to examine old patterns. Every moment of genuine connection fosters a deeper understanding of your own character, reminding you that the most transformative relationships don't just bring two people together. They reveal the invisible dimensions that shape how each person loves, fears, hopes, and grows. If this message is helping you see your own life more clearly, take a moment, subscribe, and share it with someone who has been questioning a connection they can't quite explain. Sometimes the right message reaches a person just when they are ready to hear it. One of the quietest yet most powerful forces shaping human relationships is the fear of judgment. Many people imagine their biggest obstacle is the opinions of others, but the deepest struggle often lies within. Long before a single criticism is uttered, the mind begins to create imaginary conversations, anticipate rejection, and erect invisible barriers. It predicts disapproval from family, friends, or society. And these expectations gradually become stronger than the genuine feelings of the heart. Instead of asking what is true, the mind repeatedly asks, what will everyone think? At that point, external voices begin to replace inner honesty. Decisions are guided by anxiety rather than understanding, and fear begins to masquerade as wisdom. What appears to be caution is sometimes nothing more than a desire to avoid discomfort at any cost. This fear intensifies especially when a relationship doesn't conform to usual expectations. Whether the difference involves age, background, culture, or life experience, anything that challenges accepted norms can trigger an instinctive desire to seek approval before relying on personal experience. People begin to doubt their own perceptions, not because the connection lacks meaning, but because they have learned to value acceptance over authenticity. The opinions of outsiders, many of whom know nothing about the relationship, carry more weight than the quiet observations of those living it. This creates a painful inner conflict. One part yearns to explore the connection honestly, while another remains imprisoned by imagined consequences. The result is an emotional paralysis where fear prevents genuine reflection and replaces it with constant self-doubt. However, the heart speaks a very different language than fear. It doesn't demand impulsive decisions or reckless certainties. Instead, it invites us to pay attention to the qualities that truly matter: respect, trust, responsibility, compassion, and mutual growth. These are realities that cannot be measured by public opinion. A crowd may celebrate a deeply toxic relationship or condemn one that quietly nurtures both people to become wiser and more compassionate. The majority is not always the measure of truth. This doesn't mean that every unconventional relationship is right, nor that criticism should be automatically ignored. It means that genuine discernment requires looking beyond appearances and the noise of collective judgment. Only by confronting the fear of disapproval can a person begin to hear the quieter voice of conscience, where honest reflection replaces borrowed opinions and authentic understanding becomes possible. Not every powerful emotional connection is destined to become a lifelong relationship, and recognizing this truth requires wisdom rather than disappointment. Human beings often assume that intensity is proof of permanence. When someone enters your life and awakens emotions you've never experienced before, it's tempting to believe that connection will last forever. However, intensity and duration are not the same. A storm can transform an entire landscape in a single night, while a tranquil river shapes the land over many years. Both are powerful, but they serve different purposes. Similarly, some relationships are meant to stay, while others are meant to awaken, challenge, or teach. Their value depends not only on how long they last, but on what they reveal about who you are and who you are becoming. Discernment begins when you stop asking yourself only how intensely you feel something and start asking yourself why you feel it. A strong attraction can arise from admiration, loneliness, curiosity, shared hurts, or a longing for qualities you feel you lack. These emotions are real, but they don't automatically indicate lasting compatibility. A relationship capable of weathering life's inevitable challenges must be built on more than just emotion. It requires mutual respect, honest communication, emotional accountability, patience, and a willingness to grow through discomfort rather than run from it. Without these foundations, even the most passionate connection can slowly dissolve as everyday reality replaces idealized expectations. Feelings can open the door, but character determines whether two people can continue walking together. There is also a tendency to mistake every significant encounter for destiny simply because it changes you. However, transformation doesn't always require permanence. Some people appear just when you need them, offering encouragement, perspective, healing, or a difficult lesson that redirects the course of your life. Once that lesson is learned, the relationship may naturally change or end. This doesn't diminish its importance. Its purpose may have been fulfilled. Clinging to every connection out of fear of loss can prevent you from understanding what it was truly meant to teach. Discernment invites you to appreciate both presence and departure with equal honesty. It encourages you to observe whether the relationship continues to foster integrity, compassion, accountability, and mutual growth, or whether it survives only out of fear, habit, or an inability to let go of an experience that once felt extraordinary. A relationship reveals its deepest value not through dramatic declarations or fleeting emotions, but through the subtle changes it brings to the lives of those involved. True love isn't measured by the intensity of feelings in a single moment, but by how, through the presence of the other, you gradually become wiser, more responsible, and more compassionate. A healthy relationship doesn't require one person to withdraw so the other feels safe. Instead, it creates an environment where both individuals are encouraged to grow without losing their identity. Each person becomes a source of strength rather than a source of dependence, inspiring the other to face challenges with greater courage, patience, and honesty. Over time, this shared growth becomes far more meaningful than the initial excitement that brought them together. Wisdom in a relationship manifests in everyday decisions, not extraordinary moments. It lies in the willingness to listen before reacting, to admit mistakes without pride, and to address disagreements with respect rather than hostility. Accountability is expressed by keeping promises, accepting the consequences of one's actions, and recognizing that trust is built with consistency, not grand gestures. Compassion grows when both people learn to understand each other's fears, limitations, and vulnerabilities without using them as weapons. These qualities require effort, humility, and emotional maturity. They cannot be created with attraction alone, nor can they be sustained with passion alone without character. As these virtues deepen, the relationship gradually transforms into a space where both individuals feel safe enough to become more authentic versions of themselves. Therefore, every meaningful connection deserves careful observation rather than immediate judgment or blind idealization. It's not enough to ask whether the relationship is exciting or acceptable to others. The more important question is what kind of people each person is becoming because of the relationship. Does it foster honesty rather than deception? Does it strengthen integrity rather than compromise it? Does it cultivate patience where there was impulsiveness, humility where there was arrogance, and understanding where there was fear? A relationship that consistently inspires these changes possesses a depth that cannot be measured by outward appearances alone. Growth is rarely comfortable. However, it is often the clearest sign that the connection contributes to the development of both individuals, allowing love to become not just an emotion, but a path toward greater wisdom, responsibility, and compassion. One of life's greatest challenges is learning to distinguish the noise of the outside world from the still, small voice of inner understanding. Most people spend years seeking approval, advice, and certainty from others, believing that the answers to life's most important questions lie in public opinion or social acceptance. While guidance from trusted individuals can be valuable, there comes a point when each person must examine their own motives with complete honesty. A relationship, especially one that defies expectations, cannot be understood solely through the judgments of observers who see only fragments of the story. The deepest truths are rarely discovered by following the loudest voices. They emerge through patient reflection, sincere self-examination, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable questions without immediately seeking easy answers. Listening beyond external opinions does not mean ignoring wisdom or rejecting thoughtful advice. It means refusing to let fear, prejudice, or social pressure supplant your own discernment. Many mistake conformity for wisdom because it feels safer to agree with the majority than to explore an uncertain path. However, history repeatedly demonstrates that what society accepts at one time may be challenged later, and what it rejects may come to be understood differently. If every important decision is made solely to avoid criticism, a person gradually loses the ability to recognize what truly aligns with their values. Other people's opinions become stronger than their own conscience, and other people's beliefs silently replace personal understanding. Therefore, honestly examining your motives is essential. Ask yourself if your feelings stem from genuine respect, mutual care, and a desire to grow together, or if they are driven by loneliness, insecurity, admiration, fear of being alone, or a need for validation. Honest reflection requires courage because it can reveal truths that are both comforting and difficult. You may discover that your connection is based on authenticity and deserves to be patiently nurtured. Or perhaps you'll realize that your emotions have been shaped more by unmet needs than by genuine compatibility. Neither of these discoveries is a failure. Both are opportunities to get to know yourself more deeply. The purpose of self-examination isn't to justify every desire or condemn every unconventional feeling, but to ensure that your decisions are guided by clarity rather than impulse, by responsibility rather than fantasy, and by an honest understanding of both yourself and the person before you. Before deciding that this connection is a miracle or a mistake, allow time to reveal what emotion alone cannot. The deepest truths rarely arrive with noise. They unfold through the patience, honesty, and courage to see yourself and the other person without illusions. If this bond fosters greater wisdom, responsibility, compassion, and integrity, it's already serving a meaningful purpose, regardless of where the path leads. If it's based solely on fantasy or fear, reality will gently reveal that too. The measure of love has never been how extraordinary it feels in a single moment, but how faithfully it withstands the test of truth. Listen closely, not to the strident voices that rush to judgment, nor to the restless impulses that demand immediate certainty, but to the serene awareness that grows stronger each time you choose honesty over illusion. Some people come into your life to stay, others to awaken you. But every genuine encounter leaves a lesson that becomes part of the person you are meant to be. Perhaps the greatest gift is not simply finding someone who loves you, but becoming someone capable of recognizing love with clear eyes, an open heart, and unwavering wisdom.